Have you ever looked at Dan and gone, that guy has no clue what's going on? Have you ever looked at somebody and thought, man, they have it together? Like right now, they look like they have the perfect family. They've got a good job. They seem to vacation. They post it online. Like when I look at that person or I look at that family, I get a little bit jealous maybe, or a little bit like, man, I wish that was me. Now, on the flip side, have you ever looked at somebody and gone, I'm glad I'm not them. Marriage is falling apart. Kids are a train wreck. Can't hold a job. When you look at different people or different families or situations, when you look on all fronts, some look to be winning, some look to be maybe losing, but I want to ask the question, I really want you to think about this. What's the difference between the two? If you could pinpoint one or two things, what do you think it would be for the person that has it together and the person that doesn't? I'll tell you what it's not before I tell you what I think it is. I don't think it's educational degrees and diplomas. I know many people who haven't even graduated college or high school that have it together. It's not marital status, because I know people who are single, I know people who are divorced that have it together. I don't think it's family size. I don't think it's 2.2 kids, because that's the American average of the household. I don't think it's the all-American family that distinguishes someone having it together, because I know people who don't have kids that have it together. I don't even think it's money that determines if people have it together or not. So if it's not money, and it's not family, and it's not kids, and it's not affluence, let me ask you the question, what do you think it is? Because I'm going to tell you, because I have the microphone, I'm going to tell you what I think it is. I think it's people's determined. Now you're like, Dan, that doesn't make grammatical sense. Like, that's not a complete sentence. Exactly. Because now you're going to remember it. I think the difference between the people that don't have it together in their lives and the people that do have it together in their lives is they're determined. What does the word determine mean? Let me tell you. It means to establish or ascertain definitively after consideration, investigation, or calculation. To ascertain with confidence after you've considered it, investigated, or calculated what you're going after. It's to give direction to by making decisions or having control. This determine is to give direction and have control about where you're going. Here's the third one. It's to decide or settle conclusively and authoritatively. The difference, in my opinion, between people that have it together and don't has nothing to do with marital status, has nothing to do with money, has nothing to do with affluence, has nothing to do with appearance, has nothing to do with degrees and education and masters and doctorates. It's their ability to decide or settle something internally. Now I want to layer down one more step. What if we could actually predetermine then? We're in church, let's go spiritual. What if we could predetermine to choose to honor God? Before the situation arises that we might not honor God in, what if we could actually determine? I've already made this determination before I have to make it. Think about it this way. In the month of April, I have my cheat days, I'm allowed cheat days. I've determined in April that I'm going to try to get a little bit healthier. I tried to do my top button up on my shirt and it doesn't work. I'm like, I got to lose a little lbs. So I've determined in April, and then my wife came home with this one yesterday just to sabotage me. I've predetermined that I'm going to, as much as I want to choose this, I have to choose this. Now, I wish I could melt this down and put it over my apple, but I can't. I'm predetermining to choose healthy in April versus unhealthy. So that when my wife comes home with the giant bunny that she got on clearance at Target, I choose this. This is better. This is healthier. What if we could actually predetermine our spiritual resolve? What if we could predetermine, I'm going to decide before I'm tempted, that I will not sin against you, God, so that when the temptation comes, I've already predetermined, before I have to make that decision, that I will not eat this. What would happen in your life? What would happen in my life? What would happen in our lives if we predetermined? You're scrolling on your computer, your phone, your tablet, and you've predetermined that you will not venture into inappropriate websites that cause you to sin and dishonor yourself, dishonor your spouse, dishonor your God. You've predetermined, I will not allow myself to go there. You pop your head off the pillow in the morning and you predetermine, I don't care what the weather's like. We get one sunny day every week. Okay, I'll take it. I predetermine that I'm going to have a good outlook today. I predetermine that today when I see someone, I'm going to build them up instead of tear them down. What would happen in your life, my life, and our lives collectively if we predetermined to see the positive rather than the negative, to build up rather than to tear down? Predetermined. See, when you're predetermined to make a Christ-centered and Christ-honoring choice, before you're confronted with that choice, you will choose to do the right thing every time if you're determined to do it. See, predetermination takes place before the temptation can take you places you don't want to go. Let me say that again so we all catch it. Being predetermined takes place before the temptation comes, because that temptation will take you places that you don't want to go. Predetermined. See, I think that when you're predetermined, you're actually deciding which direction your life is going to go. Now, it's not foolproof. Life happens. Bad things happen. There's ups and there's downs. But when you're predetermined, you're choosing which outlook you have. You're choosing which direction that you can take. I saw this quote online recently by Lisa Villaprosa, and she said this: the happiest people I know are always evaluating and improving themselves. And the unhappiest people I know are usually evaluating and judging others. This is all about predetermining how you're going to view yourself and how you're going to view others. How you're going to speak to yourself and about yourself, and how you're going to speak to and about others. Predetermining. See, the bottom line is, and I think you would know this as well as I do, that the decisions that you make daily direct your life. But the decisions you make come from somewhere. They come from your thoughts. Scientists and psychologists, sociologists, neuroscientists would say that we have 60,000 thoughts a day. I want you to think about that just for a second. You have 60,000 thoughts a day. Now, if you are the average American, you sleep for 8 hours. So you got to bump that into about 16 hours, which equals to about a thought a second. Every second, you're thinking a new thought. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Of your 60,000 thoughts per day, 80% of them are negative. So of your 60,000 thoughts, 48,000 of your thoughts are negative. You've told yourself, you've bought a lie, you've believed something somebody said about you all those years ago. We talked about this last month in the shame series. 48,000 thoughts a day about myself and about others and about the situation are negative. And if your thoughts control your decisions and your decisions control your destination, where are your thoughts taking you, and how are you deciding to go where you're going? This is not necessarily a preaching message. This is more of a teaching message, because I think if we can grasp this as people, it will change our lives. It'll change our families. It'll change our workplaces. It'll change our community. 48,000 negative thoughts a day. So, your thoughts determine your decisions. Your decisions determine your direction of your life. What would happen if we could predetermine our decisions? Here's why we don't. I don't want to offend you. We're not good decision makers. Oh, yes, I am. I'll eat this later when you're not watching. No, I've predetermined that this is April. This is May. This is still good by May, right? See, we're not good decision makers. We can justify anything. We want to be smart with our food. We want to be smart with our diet and our intake, and we eat out 4 or 5 nights a week, and then we snack a bag of Doritos at 10 o'clock at night. We're not good decision makers all the time. We want to be smart with our money. And so we start to save, and then we see something we want, and we just spend. You know, the average American spent $883 per person on Christmas gifts this past year. $883 per person. In my family, that's over $5,000. I gave my kids bubble wrap and an egg carton and said, make a toy. Like that's parenting, though. That's good. That's use your creative. $883 a person. See, we want to be wise with our money, but we don't always make good decisions. We want to be smart with our words, and yet we end up saying things that hurt. And sometimes it's on purpose. You hurt me, I will hurt you. We want to do the right thing, and then we end up doing the wrong thing. We aren't always the best decision makers. One time, some of you know I grew up at a camp. And in the summertime, as teenagers, we worked on the grounds crew. And our boss, his name was Mark, and there was 3 of us. There was the 3 amigos, me, Ben, and Tim. There was the 3 of us. Every summer we worked at this camp. And Mark was a work hard, play hard kind of boss. So he worked us hard during the day, but at night we were able to go tubing, boating. We could have bonfires and those things. Well, one time Mark was kind of being a jerk boss, and so we started to chirp him. And he was one of the best tube drivers for the boat. He could whip you around, and so we were like, we're gonna show Mark how good we are. And so we took 3 tubes, hooked it to the boat, and he took us out, and we're going around the lake, and we were showing off. There was some ladies at the beach that we were trying to impress, and so Ben and Tim and I were like hopping tubes. We were getting on each other's shoulders, like just ripping Mark, until Mark decided to make the best figure 8 that we had ever seen, because we didn't see it coming. And if you know anything about boating and tubing, when you make a figure 8, in the middle, massive waves. He took us through that. We didn't see it coming. I went flying off of Tim's shoulders, because that's where I was at the time, and somehow kind of landed in front of the tube, and my arm got stuck in the rope. And Mark kept going. Now I'm underneath Tim's tube with my arm stuck in the rope. Well, if you know anything about boating, you're supposed to circle back, right? You kind of take a wide swoop to go back to the place. About 90 seconds went by. I am trying to bang on the tube, but you're underwater, you can't do it. It's actually where I first became claustrophobic, I think. I hate tight spaces. Like, put me in an elevator, I'll walk 15 floors before I get in an elevator. 90 seconds go by, and then Tim just yells to Mark, cut the boat, and Tim finally hops off the tube, and here I pop up. That wasn't Mark's fault. It was my fault, because I'm a terrible decision maker. There's some ladies on the beach I'm trying to impress. I'm showing off. That's not anybody's fault but mine. You see, sometimes we want to blame other people for our consequences, and it's not their fault. We're reaping what we've sown. So what if we could actually determine to make better decisions before the decision time comes? That's what this series is all about. Predetermining our decisions in order to take our lives in a different direction. I'll just tell you this, and I mean this with all love. If you don't like the direction your life is headed, change it. Change your thoughts, because you have 60,000 of them a day. Change your decisions to honor God and honor others, and be predetermined to take your life in a different direction. Paul wrote in Romans chapter 7, he said this, and he said it so well. I don't really understand myself. This could be me talking, by the way. I'm like, I don't understand myself. I want to do what's right, but I don't do it. Instead, I do what I hate. But if I know that what I'm doing is wrong, this is actually good, because it shows that I agree that the law is good. It's your conscience. When you know you're doing something wrong, it's actually a good sign that you still have a conscience. But I don't do what I like. I do what I hate. I'm not the one doing wrong. It's the sin that lives inside of me. And I know that nothing good lives in me. That is my sinful nature. I want to do what's right, but I can't. I want to do what is good, but I don't. I don't want to do what's wrong, but I do it anyway, Paul said. And then he wrote this, but if I do what I don't want to do, I'm not the one really doing the wrong. It's the sin living in me. And I've discovered this principle of life that when I want to do what is right, I inevitably do what is wrong. This is arguably the greatest apostle who ever graced the earth, telling us, I want to do right and I do wrong. I don't want to do wrong and I do it. You know why? I'm going to tell you why. Because we are constantly overwhelmed with options and choices. This is why we do wrong. This is why we mess up, because we are overwhelmed with options and choices. And Paul understood this. We have 60,000 thoughts a day. Did you know that we make 30,000 decisions a day? You wake up in the morning, you decide if you're going to sleep in and press the snooze or get up and get going. You decide how much creamer you're going to put in your coffee, if you're going to be brave and drink it black. You decide which direction you're going to take to go to work or go to school. You're going to decide if you're going to be kind to your boss and do what they've asked, or if you're going to be insubordinate and rebellious. You have 30,000 decisions a day. Good lives in us. I want to do what's right, but I can't. And I want to give you 3 reasons, and then we're going to park in Genesis. I want to give you 3 reasons why we struggle with this. Number 1 is this. You and I both struggle from something called decision fatigue. Scientists, neuroscientists, psychologists would say it's this. Decision-making muscles get tired, and then we make poor decisions. We have to make 30,000 of them a day. And so you start, we'll use this. I want to choose right, and I want to get healthy, and I pack my lunch, and I eat healthy when I go to the office and when I go to work, and then when I get home, I've made so many decisions during the day, I get fatigued. And instead of pouring a bowl of chips, I eat a bag of chips, a family-sized bag of nacho cheese Doritos, because they're delicious. There's been times where I've gotten a bowl big enough to hold the whole bag of the nacho cheese Doritos. Because by the time 10 o'clock comes around, my decision-making muscles get tired and I get fatigued. I remember having conversations with a couple of our kids, and they would say this, by the time I get home from school, I've had to be on my best behavior all day. I can't keep doing it. Do you know why? Because they were fatigued. This is a literal science of your brain. You get fatigued. You're paying off debt. You're making smart decisions. But then you see something you have to have. And by the time that you're scrolling at 8 o'clock at night on the Amazon Prime and you see it and you click buy now, it's because you're fatigued. Paul knew this before there was terminology for this. I want to do what's right, but I can't. I don't want to do what's wrong, but I do it anyway. Decision fatigue. Here's number 2. Why we can't do what's right. Decision insecurity. How many of you have made a decision and been reamed out for it? And then you're gun shy to make that decision again because you got hurt before. Again, I preach transparently, and so you're going to hear things about me. I can remember where I was the very first time I answered wrong in a class and the teacher made fun of me. And I never answered publicly in class again. I was in 5th grade. 6th through 12th, all of college, I never answered a question publicly. When the teacher asked, does anybody know? Oh, I might have known it, but I'm not answering. Because the last time I answered, oh, my apple fell. The last time I answered, I got made fun of. If you want to know if you struggle from decision insecurity, how long does it take you to pick a show? It's a true story. A couple nights ago, Kim was hopping in the shower, getting ready for bed. I hopped on TV and I went on to Netflix and I went on to Hulu. 25 minutes later, 86 shows in my queue. Kim came out and said, "You not watching anything yet?" I'm like, "Nope, I'm going to bed." I didn't watch a show. My queue is stacked full of shows because I didn't know which one to pick. Decision insecurity. It's a real thing. If you want to know if you struggle with it, think about when you were younger. Did you decide quickly and like, this is where I'm going to college? Or you're like, what if I pick the wrong one and mess my life up? Think about your spouse. Were you worried about missing Mr. Right by picking this one? We have decision insecurity. No one's immune from this. All of us struggle with decision insecurity. But here's where we're going to park the rest of the day. Just a few more minutes. It's called decision that are based on emotions. You want to know why you don't do the right thing and you do the wrong, but you want to do the wrong and you end up doing the wrong and you're like, I don't know what to do. It's because we often struggle with emotion-based decisions. You didn't mean to yell at your kids. You didn't want to yell at your kids. But they done messed up. They did something wrong. And all of a sudden, the emotion comes out. How could you? Why would you? We told you not to. Don't you listen? And you don't mean to crush them. You just responded. Emotion-based decisions. You go out to the company party. I'm just going to have one drink, one beer. At least a two. By the night's end, you're dancing on the table with a lampshade on your head because of emotion-based decisions. You let the emotion of the moment catch you. No, I don't think anybody's immune from emotion-based decisions. Emotion-based decisions will undo you. They will undo you. But if you predetermine now what you'll do next, you'll actually do what's right in the eyes of God. If you predetermine to honor God, and you predetermine the choices now, what you will do next. You predetermine now what you'll watch. You predetermine now what you'll eat. You'll predetermine now who and what gets your money. You predetermine now how you respond to your kids. It will change your life. In fact, in Proverbs 16, it says, whatever you do, commit it to the Lord. Can I just ask you a question? Do you find yourself in this verse that whatever you do, you've committed it to the Lord? I'm going to get in your kitchen just for a second. Or is it just Sunday morning from 10 to 11? Whatever you do, when you wake up in the morning, you commit it to the Lord. I'm going to work. God, this day is yours. Help me to see people as you see them. I got to have a hard conversation. It's yours. I'm going to see somebody that needs help, and I'm going to meet that need, and I'm going to commit it to you. Pre-decide now what you will do next. Predetermine now who and what you will serve. I actually think one of the greatest examples of this, and I said earlier that we're going to park here in Genesis, is Abraham and Sarah. If you grew up in church, you kind of probably know a little bit of the story of Abraham and Sarah. Abraham was promised, they were promised a child from God, that he would have offspring as numerous as the sand on the seashore and the stars in the sky, that there would be population on earth coming through Abraham. And God had promised this. And the promise is going unfulfilled. And I'll just tell you, there is a battle of faith between Abraham and God, between Sarah and God. There's this battle happening in these chapters. God's promise, but it's not coming through. Now, I'll give you a spoiler alert. God comes through on the promise. The promise was made when Abraham was 75. The promise comes to fruition at 100. Can you imagine having a baby at 100? I mean, we had Micah when I was like 37. Like, I was gassed every night. I'm toast. Imagine 100? Good night. Anyway, Abraham and Sarah have this baby. It's been promised. But listen, hear me. Abraham and Sarah had predetermined who, and they had predetermined what, God's word, they would follow. They had predetermined that no matter what, God, we will follow you. No matter what, we will honor you. No matter what, we will trust you. The promise is given. They have a child. They name him Isaac. The wait's been excruciating. The child comes. And then sometime later, God said to Abraham, hey, Abe, yeah, here I am. All right, cool. Take your son, your only son. Yeah, the one that was promised, that took so long to have. The one that you stressed about and worried about and fretted about. That you longed for and prayed for. Wasn't sure if I would come through for. Yeah, take him. Awesome. And go to the land of Moriah and go and sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains. And I'll show you which one. The TV timeout. Hard pass. As a dad, hard pass. "25 years they waited. 25 years they struggled. 25 years they probably fought and wrestled. They finally have the fulfillment of the promise, and then God says, I want him back. In essence, God says, kill him. Now, I'll just tell you this. I'm grateful that we serve a God that gave his son to be the ultimate sacrifice, and we celebrated that last week at Easter, that we don't have to do this anymore. It's an impossible decision as a parent. And yet somewhere along the line, Abraham and Sarah had predetermined that we will follow God, we will honor God, and we will obey God no matter what. Because the next verse says, early the next morning, Abraham got up, saddled his donkey, took his servants with him, and his son Isaac, chopped wood for a fire for the burnt offering, and set out for the place. I'm forgetting to set my alarm the next morning. I'm not getting up. I'm not getting out of bed. Like, absolutely not. This is crazy. Are you kidding me? But somewhere along the line, they had predetermined, no matter what, God is God. No matter what, I'll do this. I'll choose this. I will choose to honor you, God, no matter what comes my way. They had predetermined. When they reached the place, God told them about Abraham built an altar, arranged the wood on it, then he tied his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Abraham picked up the knife to kill his son as a sacrifice. Now, we'll pause here just for a second. If you know the story, you know that it doesn't come through. If you don't know the story, you're like, what is happening right now? This is crazy. Like, if you didn't grow up in church, this is asinine right now. God just said, I'm going to give you a kid. He finally comes through on his word, and now he wants him back, and you're going to do it? You're actually going to follow through on this? Knife in hand. At that moment, the angel of the Lord called out, Abraham, Abraham, yeah, here I am. Don't lay a hand on the boy. Don't hurt him in any way. For now I know that you truly fear God. You've not withheld from me even your son, your only son. Let's just stop here for a second, and I want you to think about this. There was just as much determined in Isaac than there was in his father. See, Abraham is the hero of the story, right? Because Abraham's the obedient one, and Abraham's the dad, and he's the alpha. Isaac is 15 or 16 years old by the time this happens. And I don't mean any disrespect to some of you seasoned gentlemen. At 116, you ain't beating up a 16-year-old. Had Isaac wanted out of this, it would have been over for Abraham. Now, Eli, plug your ears. My 17-year-old son is this close to taking me when we wrestle. I still got old man strength a little bit. In 2 years, he's taking me. In 2 years, he will be stronger than I am. But I still got you right now. You telling me a 16-year-old farm boy, he's chucking bales of hay as a kid, can't take a 116-year-old? It's over. See, Abraham gets the credit. There was just as much determined in Isaac than there was in Abraham. You know how far this trek was? 50 miles. That's basically from here to the Pittsburgh airport. They walked. And Isaac knows, I'm the guy. I'm done. I'm toast. And he's willing to let it happen because somewhere along the line, Abraham and Sarah had resolved, they had predetermined, we will follow God no matter what, and they had taught their kids that. No matter what, God is God. 50 miles. They get to the place, and Isaac allows his dad to lay him on the altar tied up. And then the angel of the Lord shows up and says, don't go through with it now that I know. I think God honors our determined. I think God honors our predetermined. Our resolve before the temptation comes. Our resolve before the fight comes. Our resolve before the argument comes. That I'm going to speak truth, but I'm going to speak in love. I think God honors that. But in a culture of drift where it's really easy just to do whatever we want, be whatever we want, go wherever we want, it's really hard to stay determined to honor God. It's really hard to stay determined to follow God. And I know what you're thinking, because as I was prepping this, like, why does this matter so much, though? Like, what's the big deal? When your determined is clear, your decisions are easier. Listen, if you take nothing else today other than there's an apple and a chocolate, take this. When you are determined to honor God, your decisions are easier. They just are. How's your determined? When you know what you value ahead of time, you can determine ahead of time to follow God, honor God, obey God. At the risk of sounding jerkish, why are you here? I actually asked myself that this morning. Like, why am I here? And I don't mean it in a negative way. Like, my purpose, and Jason, the call for worship this morning was good. It was great. I'm here to worship God. I'm here to learn about God. I'm here to grow my relationship with God. I find myself like Paul sometimes. I don't want to do, and I do it, and I don't want to. But I'm here to honor God and learn more about God and about myself. And when your determined is clear, like why you're doing what you're doing, the decisions you make are a whole heck of a lot easier. Why are you here? What does that mean for you spiritually? When you're determined to honor God, I'll just say this, and then we'll wrap up. Unwise decisions tend to compound, leading to more unwise decisions and more unwise decisions. And before long, we're living in a van down by the river eating government cheese, right? An old school SNL reference for some of you. But God-honoring decisions, they compound. They compound the right way. Are you going to be perfect? Nope. Nobody is. But God honors the intent. God honors the desire of our heart. God honors when we're determined and our decisions become easier. They actually compound in a positive way. Be predetermined. If your thoughts control your decisions and your decisions control your life, what directions are you headed? Life or death? Be predetermined. Be predetermined to do something different if you don't like the direction your life is taking you. If you don't like your body and your health and your status there, do something different. If you don't like your finances and current financial state, be determined to put God first with your tithe, with your offering. I know people that freeze their credit cards in ice in their freezer, and they don't save it on their phone or their computer, their credit card number. So before they make a big purchase, they have to go to the freezer, take their credit card out, run it under hot water, and really stop and think, do I need this? They took control. You're like, that's stupid. Well, for you it might be, but for them they needed it, and they were determined to not wreck themselves and their family financially. I actually thought it was pretty genius. Be determined to honor God. So I'll close with this. This is just real talk from Dan. Ready? Dan has to predetermine his time in the office, because if Dan's not careful, I can waste time on my phone. I have to predetermine that my phone goes away and I work. Otherwise, I can do this. I know it about myself. Dan has to predetermine, hear me, Dan has to predetermine that God gets my time first in the morning, because if I don't, God doesn't get any time. I know that about myself. You're like, well, I can do it at night. You might be able to. By 10 o'clock, I'm fading fast, and I want to sleep. Eli's like, that's true. He's 10:15, I'm done. If God doesn't get first, God doesn't get any from me. I know that about myself, so I've predetermined that he gets first. Before emails, before text messages, before conversations with my wife or my kids, God gets first. It just works for me. Last confession. Sometimes, by nature, if I'm not careful, I'm selfish. Here's how I know. When I look at a family photo of our 6, there's 5 I'm not looking at, and there's 1 I am. It's me. When I look at a photo of my family, the first person I look at is myself. How do I look? How's my hairline? Is there as much gray showing in the picture? Can we edit that out? Did they get my good side? Just real confession. I'm probably not alone in that. That when you look at a picture, other than a selfie of just you and there's somebody else, you're looking at yourself first. I, by nature, am selfish. I have to predetermine to put others first. I have to predetermine that I won't waste time on my phone. I have to predetermine that God gets my first and God gets my best. And I think if we were all honest with ourselves, many of us could resonate. Sometimes we're lazy, sometimes we're selfish, sometimes we're undisciplined, sometimes we drift, sometimes we say and do the wrong things, right intentions, wrong results. And so for the next 3 weeks, what we're going to do is we're going to literally look at what does it mean to be predetermined. Next week, how do we overcome temptation? Being predetermined before the temptation comes to fight it off. There's actually a formula right in Scripture that helps us win this. We'll talk about being predetermined for surrender to God and being predetermined to obey God. I really believe this series can be transformational for so many of us.